7, but if I don't have it by now, I suppose I never will. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about the work of the office and answer any questions you have about our budget request. I want to thank the fiscal staff for their overview, and I want to begin by highlighting a few aspects of the office's work, which I think have brought tremendous value back to the state of Rhode Island. And I'm proud of the work of the men and women in the office, and I don't think the office has ever been stronger. The applications for open positions are up. The quality of the applicants is up. The interest in the office is up. As President Trump breaks down our democracy, lawyers are leaving federal agencies and want to come work for us. And that, while a bad thing for the federal government, is a very good thing for us. Before I get into the work of the office regarding the Trump administration, which has been voluminous, I want to focus on a few areas of the office's work as it pertains directly to Rhode Island. And to that end, I want to begin by thanking the General Assembly, including this committee, for its investment in the office with the 15 positions which were granted to us 2 years ago. Every single one of those positions has gone to advance the cause of everyday Rhode Islanders as we have brought those attorneys on board. And I want to point out that those positions have been funded by us. With respect to the House fiscal staff, it was not from the opioid funds that were intended to go for prevention, treatment, and recovery. There was a specific request for attorney's fees in those cases, which we were entitled to as the lawyers for the state of Rhode Island. And it was from those attorney's fees of $15 million that these positions are being paid for. So it's important to segregate the attorney's fees from the actual $330 million that my office brought back to fight the opioid crisis. And frankly, if there are any branches of government that deserve credit for the fight against that crisis, it is this General Assembly and it is my office, because it is the funds that we recovered with the assistance of the General Assembly that have allowed for the investments in, for example, additional treatment beds that are making the actual impact on that crisis. I want to move to health care. I'm sure many members of this committee followed what was happening in Massachusetts with Steward Health and the closure of multiple hospitals in Massachusetts, and the purchase through essentially a bankruptcy process of 2 hospitals there by Brown, what is now known as Brown Health. You may know, though I'm not convinced everybody in Rhode Island knows, that the state of Massachusetts is paying Lifespan $70 million over 10 years for those hospitals. I'm going to say it again. $70 million of taxpayer money are going from the Massachusetts taxpayers to Brown Health to support its purchase of those hospitals. So I want to be very clear about that, because something very different has happened in Rhode Island with respect to the 2 hospitals that were in danger of closing here, and those are Roger Williams and Fatima hospitals. I'll be very clear that those hospitals, I believe, would be closed today, but for the work by my office several years ago. We were able to extract $80 million from a private equity firm to keep those hospitals open. They didn't get that money back year over year unless they kept those hospitals open. Where we are today, as Prospect went into bankruptcy, was $50 million remained in that escrow account. What we have done, and a lot of that money was from the private equity firm that formerly owned Prospect, almost 2/3 of it. That $50 million we are granting to those hospitals as they emerge from bankruptcy and begin to run themselves separate and apart from Prospect. So what we have effectively done is save the taxpayers $50 million, because without that $50 million, these 2 hospitals will not have enough cash to get started. They have no endowment. And so I'm incredibly proud of that work as well, and it shows how my office continues to deliver for the taxpayers and the residents of this state. Notwithstanding that the governor has denied my office additional resources at every turn for reasons which only he can explain, the fact is that our office has and will continue to deliver for the people of the state. You know, the governor, for example, objected to the lead paint registry that we fought so hard to get enacted by this General Assembly and was passed overwhelmingly by this General Assembly with bipartisan support. The governor delayed that lead registry. He has continued to act in such a way that would cause it to be less effective than it is. You know that there are bills before this General Assembly which perhaps have the governor's explicit or implicit confidence that would further gut that registry. Well, the registry as it exists has already cut lead poisoning in children in this state by 24%. And I know where I stand when it comes to the children of this state, the lead-poisoned children of the state, the potentially lead-poisoned children of the state, and the landlord lobby. And I know where this General Assembly stands. You stand with the children of the state. The governor cannot say the same. But it is because of our work together, the General Assembly and my office, and many people out there as well, that 24%, the rate of lead poisoning among children has already dropped 24%. And this notion that you cannot get an inspector is frankly ludicrous. My office checks roughly every 2 weeks to see whether we could get an inspector. And we could always get an inspector within 2 weeks. There is no shortage of inspectors. The law itself has been on the books for over 20 years. The lead registry is a means of enforcement. I can bring individual actions one after another, but that won't drop the rate of lead poisoning in children by 24%. This registry will, and it has. I want to talk a little bit about the consumer protection work that the office is doing. We worked with this General Assembly about 5 years ago to change our consumer protection law, which was outdated and left many Rhode Islanders looking for help. With your help, this General Assembly, we got that law passed, and our office has been using it to good effect. For example, we've gone after parking lot owners, out-of-state parking lot owners, who changed their fees for parking after Rhode Island residents enter the parking lot. I'm going to say that again. They change the fee after you go into the parking lot. So what's posted is not what you pay. They put what looks like tickets on your car to make you think your car is going to be towed, or you may have some impact on your registration, on your driver's license. We took that company to court, and we have stopped them. There's a company that is violating Rhode Island law by charging people who are applying for housing application fees, which this General Assembly has expressly prohibited. Nobody was enforcing that provision of the law. We are enforcing it. We took that company to court, and we have stopped that conduct. Just this week, we brought a case against a company that is operating in the state of Rhode Island that is supposed to be helping consumers consolidate and reduce their consumer debt. This General Assembly has authorized a certain fee structure for that. This company is violating that rule imposed by this General Assembly, again, to the detriment of consumers. So all in, last year, my office recovered roughly $600,000 for around 500 to 600, round numbers, individual consumers, separate and apart from these broad-based actions that we've brought. This is work which could be enhanced, broadened, had the governor not vetoed last year the law passed by this General Assembly, again with bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, which would have given us investigatory authority pre-filing of a consumer-related civil action. I have no idea why the governor vetoed that bill. That bill would have helped Rhode Islanders in the way. We're already helping them in the examples that I've given, but would broaden our ability to get the kind of information we need. For example, I'll give you one critical example. If there is a fellow AG of mine in another state investigating a nursing home for misconduct, they have the ability to get records that I do not. Under this provision, I would have the same authority as my neighboring states, like New York. I can't even follow up on a tip, which is the way we operate, from a fellow attorney general in another state. So by vetoing that authority, and the governor said he vetoed it because he was afraid of the attorney general as a roving investigative authority. Well, I think what this state needs is more roving investigative authority. We know that Rhode Islanders want an inspector general. We know that Rhode Islanders want an attorney general that is fighting on their behalf. And why the governor is standing in the way, only he can answer. Now, I'm going to turn very briefly to our work with respect to the Trump administration. I remember on Martin Luther King Day, the day of the inauguration, that I spoke with you, Representative Hall, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And you may recall that I said that I anticipated that we were going to need to fight for our democracy. We were going to need to fight on behalf of Rhode Islanders to ensure that our democracy continued to exist. And that wasn't, in my view, an overstatement then, and it's not an overstatement now. Everything that I anticipated this president would do and more has happened. The good news is that attorneys general from around the country prepared for that eventuality or possibility, and ultimately eventuality, beginning last June. And so we were ready when the president sought to outlaw birthright citizenship. We were ready to file a case right here in Rhode Island, and I'm incredibly proud of that, in federal court, to stop the federal funding freeze, which would have impacted this committee, because as you know, 1/3 of our state budget comes from federal funding. 1/3 of our budget, Representative, comes from federal funding that was endangered by the president's OMB freeze. Now, the president would say today that he wasn't talking about Medicaid, but we know. I have right here in my folder a declaration from Jonathan Womer from the administration, which lays out that on the night that the OMB memo issued, the state could not draw down its Medicaid funding. Could not draw down its Medicaid funding. Every single part of 1/3 of this state's budget was imperiled by the action of the president and his administration. And it was only because of the action that we filed within 24 hours of that memo coming out that Judge McConnell brought that conduct, that misconduct, that unconstitutional conduct to a halt. We have fought to ensure that our institutions here, including URI, get its NIH funding. We have fought against the intrusion into the confidential information by Elon Musk and his troops in an unauthorized way. We know going forward that federal money, to the extent it continues to flow in the future, will be conditioned on things that run directly against the principles of the people of this state. There's no doubt in my mind that the president will say, you will get your federal money only if. You will get your federal money only if. And there's only one office in this state that can push back against that, and it is mine. And this is in part why I asked the governor for additional resources to engage in that fight. Just like Hawaii gave its attorney general an additional $5 million because the administration in Hawaii understood that the attorney general was the only office able to carry on this fight. If this governor really believed that Donald Trump was a danger to our democracy, as he plainly is, he would be standing with my office instead of trying to thwart it. He would be enhancing my budget instead of trying to hurt it. And so when the governor stands before the men and women of the state of Rhode Island and says that he is finally warmed to the fight against this administration as it attempts to sideline the Congress and undermine the judiciary, the men and women, children of this state should remember that the one office that is working round the clock, literally, and some of them are sitting behind me, to fight this fight, the governor stands not with them. And if you're not standing with us, then you're standing with Trump.